Hello.
Glenn.
Hi.
What's going on?
Nothing much.
Nothing much. Oh.
What's going on with you?
Man, observing, analyzing, and concluding.
I'm back to reading a book that I thought I should go back and review again.
Oh, you do that too, right?
Eh?
You do that too. You review old books.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that's what I.
By the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Oh, you know what? I just bought that book the other day.
Yeah.
It was like a bestseller.
His ninth book was called One.
The White?
The ninth.
Oh, the ninth.
Yeah. It was called One. So.
What's that book about?
About going back in time and going forward in time and meeting yourself along the way based on the different options you had when you made decisions. You made one decision, then your life expands from that point, and that's the end product of that decision. Should you have made another decision, there's also another path that expands from that, and you can look at what would have occurred from making that decision instead of the one you made, and so on. So you could have had 3 or 4 choices and eventually know exactly where your life would have gone in that story. Of course, it's all fiction. Yeah. Demonstrates that, sometimes you think you've made the wrong decision, but in the end it proves out to be right.
That's weird. That's like I was watching a video on about these Native Americans, and one lady said people go out through their lives searching what the meaning of the goal, what it is, like what they have to do, and then they find out they were doing it the whole time. Later on, but I was watching. It was this video. It was a video split into like 6 parts on this Native American community, and I criticized it, and somebody I knew got kind of upset with me because I criticized them, because I said that they basically oppress people from the bottom, and the other parts of the system oppress people from the top. And he said, "Oh, I see you blaming the victim," and because in the video the natives, they have some like true wisdom I've seen, but underneath, like when you dig in it, it's like they talk about a prophecy, how every time, like every particular point in time is a cleansing, and you can see how this has been put in their religion, and they mix like wisdom and it's mixed in with like spirituality and stuff. So you lived with those people before, or?
Yeah, well, I went and participated in the defense team for one Native leader in British Columbia during a trial. Lasted 10 months. And then along the way, I discovered that they were all in on it. The natives, as well as the lawyers, as well as the Crown, were all part of a conspiracy. We're all working together, pretending there was a criminal activity that had occurred, and yet it was all rigged.
Yeah, and I remember in the encyclopedia, it talks about, they called it the American Mysteries, and how, like the Iroquois, and they had a select few that would know So they do mention that they do have secret societies and Masonic writings.
Yeah.
I don't know, and people seem to, it's like a cover, I guess, the perfect cover because they've been oppressed and, you know, depopulated.
Well, what you have is always a battle coming from both ends. Comes at you from both ends. So if you have, say, the church at the top end, running the show against you. At the other end, you've got the native people whom you believe are on your side, also running against you on the side of the church, but pretending not to be, pretending to be a different approach to life. But in fact, they're all working together. And in the middle, you can have the wee man, who's basically inside your own place of abode, your house, acting as your wife, but in fact working for the other side.
And speaking of wee man, I did a Google search on, All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. And I looked up, I did a search on Iron Lady, and it was a Wikipedia that popped up. And this Margaret Thatcher and Golda Meir, they're not the only ones. There's like so many of them.
Oh, yeah.
All in government.
Yeah.
And another term they call, I think it's like iron, steel butterfly, something they call them.
Yeah.
Something like that. So there's like so many of them. I don't know, maybe I send you the names. You could probably look into them if you haven't already. Looked into them. But
it all comes down to FE.
FE? EC? Oh, no.
Code for iron.
Oh, yeah,
Female.
FE. Yeah.
Female. Femme in French.
So they only have iron ladies. They don't have stainless steel ladies.
But that's because that's every time you get hardened, you move up. You start off as iron, but you then go to steel and then go up to chrome. So each level, one is basically the raw material, iron. The next one is the raw material born twice, being put back in a fire, hammered again, and you've got a much harder, longer lasting material. Then additives are added to it, and you get chrome, which makes it harder and prettier, shinier than steel.
Now, to make these the more efficient one, that's going to take a long period of time, because I remember you saying, like, when they do this genetic engineering, like when they mix DNA from another animal with a human being, he said that if you want to see effects, it'd have to take a while for nature to basically take its course. Well,
if you look at the time they've allotted for themselves, the northern hemisphere is to be done with by 2062. So you're dealing with 50 years, 54 years there, basically, 53 years. But then there's the 1,000 years of the southern hemisphere. So the final product doesn't come until the southern hemisphere has been done. So they've got plenty of time to do their additional changes that they want, and especially the last part, which is the gills.
Yeah, that right there, I think would take a while, because
you have to change the ear, basically,
That was in that movie.
Yeah.
Waterworld.
Yeah, Waterworld. Or
you think it would be in the ear?
Yeah, you have to change either the year or add a second hole below the year for that process, which is basically designed to take oxygen out of water. Now, we have people in the world today who have mastered holding their breath, and they're up to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't hold my breath for 30 seconds. They can hold it for 10 minutes. So that means the process of extracting oxygen from water has to be still in us as a recessive gene. And it's a matter of reactivating things that were operational when we were eels at one time in the past, for example.
How do you reactivate a gene?
It's usually through use. So if a person is practicing holding their breath and increasing, that would probably lead to a reactivation of a gene. And then in genetics, you can go find that gene. And then you can have a procedure, a genetic procedure to make it repeat that and come out as a prime operating mechanism. Much in the same way as they went around in Australia when they were using Australia as a prison camp. And since a lot of the people who were sent there were mass murderers, for example, or serial rapists or something, knowing what the person had done and then going in and looking through the DNA, through the genome of 5 or 6 or 20 of these mass murderers, you could locate the one gene that would be operational in them, compare it to normal people, see how in normal people that is recessed and not operational. So you know what you're dealing with.
I think with Charles Manson was one of those people who
wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, do you know what like the message, like people like him and the guy who did the Summer of Sam killing?
Yeah.
What was their message? It was a message to...
Well, the message is that the system is able to manufacture a task-specific slave. Not only manufacture it, but it can manufacture it as a sleeper cell so that it doesn't show up until it receives its password. That sleeper cell is unlocked at a time in the future. And that's why you see all of these guys that appear on the news that went into a school and shot people, and everybody says, I never would have believed it. He was such a nice fella.
Yeah, like that Asian guy in Virginia. And it was funny, I've heard that he, like, not too far, like a government facility, right near where the person lives.
Yeah.
So they probably like...
But often it's done before birth, and then something in their lives is picked out to be the key that turns it on, and overnight, in a matter of seconds, a lot like you saw in the Manchurian Candidate there.
Yeah. But that was through some type of social engineering that they did it with that person. It wasn't...
Well, it was a word.
Yeah.
Something to do with the Queen of Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
I seem to remember.
Yeah, I remember, and that triggered it. Like, but you said you can do it genetically, and you can do it.
Yeah, you can do it through social engineering, where the person doesn't appear to have it. It's recessed for all intents and purposes, but it's lying there just under the surface, waiting for the message.
Yeah, with this task-specific slave, I watched a movie a while ago. It's called Eon Flux. It shows this. It shows what you're saying with how the media communicates directly to a person's brain, and it showed that in that movie. It was like a futuristic movie, and everybody's brought back and brought back and brought back, reincarnated. With yeah, they always show these messages, the thing, everything that you're saying. You know, is that how you find that? Is that how you find out with the, like, say, like with the media in a person's head? Do you find that personally from movies, or you just go?
Well, some of it has to be reasoning from what you get into your everyday life, your brain. But the old stuff that comes as intuition, coming out of the spine, is what allows you to take what you would normally take as, okay, this is fiction. But if you then pass it through a test, through your intuition, and your intuition says that's not fiction, that happened at some time in my existence, talking about, the information that's recorded in the spine, then you have to start looking at things more seriously and say, okay, if this is not fiction, how do they go about doing this? And go through a search of looking for the links to doing it that way. You should never be making decisions, observe, analyze, and conclude. Basically means that you go through the process of analyzing everything that comes to your brain through a program of intuition, so that you get both sides. You get the modern version and you get the ancient version before you decide which way is the right way.
Yeah, when I do that, like observe and analyze, like, I don't conclude right away. Like, I really
cannot. If you're really serious about this stuff, you cannot make instant decisions.
Yeah.
Because there's a process that has to take place. And it basically deals with time allows you to download what you are now seeing and dealing with in real time into a program that has to review it for hundreds of thousands of years. And that takes time. For some people, less time than others, but it's not a flashback, instantaneous. We don't have that powerful a computer inside a human body. Now, there may, at some time in the future, be an enhanced version, but I suggest that's still a while away.
So, like,
if they allow it.
Yeah. So you think, like, the intuition of people today is better than it was, say, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago?
No, their intuition is in recess.
Oh. So it's like a matter of sharpening.
Yeah, you got to refine-tune your tuner. you got to tune in to the proper wavelength and wave band, and know that it's not the same communications bands as are in normal use, like in radio waves. But it is linked to that concept, but totally different.
That's probably how they came up with the concept of radio.
It's somewhat the same as saying, you can listen to the universe in real time, or you can listen to it under the influence of infrared or ultraviolet. Both would give you a picture, maybe not a recognizable picture for the layman to identify, but certainly for the scientist, it would tell them that there's some activity going on there that under infrared or ultraviolet. Well, what I'm referring to when I talk about the local area network created by cats and their communications, that is, again, a totally different method of communications through sensors. That sensory aspect of things is not very well understood, if understood at all, in normal communications today. But if you think about the whale, and their ability to sense things through the water, for example, and the movement of water at a speed which is unexplained in the normal science, but has recently been proven to be true. There's all of these other means of communications than the ones we're dealing with.
Yeah, they also have like hair on their bodies.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's the type of sensor. And then they do have like a natural, like sonar type of thing.
Yeah, like bats.
Yeah.
Butterflies. How do you explain a butterfly leaving Canada and going to Mexico? You look at it, there's nothing there. And yet it has that memory that can only be linked to some kind of intuition from the past that allows it to travel. Now, birds are a little more complicated version. They got more parts to them.
Yeah, I noticed that. They do. How do they know that? Just fly?
Yeah, most of the birds follow a set pattern. I guess in the old days, the flow of rivers would be one of the ways they direct it. But recently, they've tested many birds and found they follow highways.
Oh, wow.
I guess they go in one direction following a highway, and they know what happens at the other end, and that becomes recorded, and then they just play it back when they're going in the opposite direction. So in the past, it may have been rivers, or it may have been lava flows, or what have you. I don't know.
Yeah, another thing, and when I was watching these Native American, they said, like when they look at animals, like people today look at them as just resources, but they said that, but they're not just resources. They're actually like family. He said that they were like how they had, where they got their medicines was like from just looking at animals, because they were the ones using it first. And
well, where does a bird pass on to its offspring the medicine it needs to pass on? We know that in human beings that's done through mother's milk, so breastfeeding And the same thing goes with a lot of the animals. But when it comes to birds, it's done through their shit. They have droppings as they go along and eat, and the little chicks come behind, and they're pecking for their food too. And part of what they pick up is what the mother's droppings were. Medicine, immunities get passed on that way.
Yeah, and another thing the guy said too was when people take down trees and for whatever, for profit, and then they think they can just replant trees, but when you're taking down a tree, you're destroying a whole community.
It certainly changes the environment in the space around that tree, because trees don't just grow. There's a process. You have to have certain kinds of trees that can put up with wilder conditions, a lot of windy places, a lot of cold places, a lot of rainy places, would never allow much of the vegetation to grow. But the minute a pine tree grows, and then the different kinds of pine trees behind create an environment that provides protection, and then you can get the beginning of deciduous trees that grow behind this protection, and they begin with alders. And that's why a new beginning is suggested by the coming of alder amine, because it's linked to the second stage, deciduous instead of coniferous, and the first of the second stage are the alders. So there's a process before you get to oak trees, for example, or maples or things like that. But the maple is a word just linked to breasts.
So why do they use that as a Canadian?
No, we're the breast. This is where the
all the resources and all the
comes to feed.
Okay, I get it. And I heard it was named after some Canada guy named in India, I think. I'm not sure how to.
Well, there is a language of the original Hindu in southern India, which is called Canadian. So it probably is linked to that. Along the way, you've had places like Acadia. The French brought in to the maritime provinces. Things evolved, but they'll never tell you the true story in history, because it's all been done for a purpose, and that's to educate insiders, not Joe.
Yeah, I see like the message. Like speaking of Hindus, I see like they have the Trinity, and one of the main religions. There's so many like different types of Hinduism, but the one with the Trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and Shiva's the destroyer. And so you can see the message they're giving you about, Visa cards everywhere. Credits the destroyer of, I guess, of the
And
economy.
Krishna is, of course, IRS.
Oh, wow, it's all linked.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna, IRS.
They're looking for gimme, gimme, gimme.
Yeah. Wow.
And, of course, when you give them, they don't keep it. They have to pass it on to their superior.
Yeah. Speaking of Alder Amine, what's the relation to that with Aldebaran? Because there was another star called Aldebaran.
Aldebaran?
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, I was reading it. More dogma there.
Alder,
red.
breaks down to the red, la, red, backwards. So, and it means the second generation, just as the Persians were the red in the colors of the world. You have the Asians having yellow as a color, Persians being red Asians, and the combination of the two is orange.
Okay, and the word Asian, could you turn that I to an L?
Yeah, you can turn the I to an L, but in the word Asian, basically is the S can be a C. So you're dealing with Cain.
Okay.
And the word Cain is basically dealing with the builder.
Yeah. Because, and the reason I asked that, because his name is Aslan, and the Chronicles of Narnia, and Aslan in Turkey, it means lion. Yeah. And they call themselves lions. So.
Yeah. Well, Turkey was the home of the Trojans, and the story of the Trojans is the most important story in history, because it deals with exactly what we're dealing with at these end times.
Yeah, the woman.
Something on the inside is different than what you see on the outside. That's the making of the super slave. In the word Asia, with an A at the beginning and an A at the end, it basically says male, female.
Yeah, I want to find out like these like mythologies and
my theology.
Yeah, and the gods, all these different gods like Hercules. Because on one level they say it's it's basically the sun going through all the signs of the zodiac, and it could be, I guess, the travels of the soul in another level.
Well, the confusing part is they have different names for the same concept.
Yeah, I see that.
So in Norse mythology, it's different than in Roman mythology, and it's different from Greek mythology. So it's confusing on purpose. Yeah,
I see they try to confuse, but I'll see like Albert Pike, he'll show you that this guy's been, it's changed the name, and like Darth is Darth, and like Mercury is Hermes, and sometimes they mix the gods together and make them one, two in one. It'll be like Anubis was one of I guess he was a lower god, and he was mixed in with Hermes. So all that stuff gets confusing.
Well, Hermes is pretty simple.
Her is me.
I'm her. Her me.
Yeah. But why is it Hermes Trismegistus 3 times great? It's because it had 3 different names in 3 different areas.
Yeah. Trimester. It's basically giving the message that it's a trinity. It's a 3 in 1. It's not just 2 in 1. Mm-hmm. It has the medulla in there as well, with male and female.
So they planned that trinity since India.
Oh, before India was even created.
Oh, damn, man! I guess that quote said it was in the Ecclesiastes. Yeah. In the Bible, it said nothing's new under the sun.
Yeah, there's nothing new.
So whenever you hear something new, you always just think the opposite. No.
Yeah. Somebody is being handed information from the past that allows them to take credit as a new invention in modern times.
Yeah.
And the theory of relativity with Einstein is no different.
Mm-hmm.
For the work that he did for them, 20 years in the patent office, leaking information about who's looking for what and what's been discovered and how to delay it and all of that stuff. He gets credit for a thing, and in his case was the theory of relativity.
Yeah, what's another thing too with the I seen a documentary. It was and it's an Egyptian guy. This guy like supposedly discovered, batteries. They had batteries in Egypt thousands of years ago. They already had before. This is supposedly before the invention of electricity.
Right.
They found batteries and stuff.
Yeah. Well, batteries were supposed to have been invented in Ottawa by the E.B. Eddy Company. But, you listen to this stuff and, yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I got, my friend asked me a question, I wanted to ask you, he said he wanted to know that above surface on the power structure, he said he wanted to know what group of people had the most power, and I wasn't really sure. Somebody suggested that it could be the Kurds or the Basque, from what you said.
Well, the media is linked to the word atom. Medi, atom is the same word.
Oh, yeah.
So what you're looking at is the most power is in the priests of where the money is.
That's what I said. It was. I said it was a priesthood.
It always has to be priests because it's linked to religion. Yeah. And religion is basically a drug without chemistry. It basically fogs up your life and makes you pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah, okay.
So that all of the pigeons can go out fighting later. So you're dealing with a priest as the gatherer of the funds, but you're not dealing with priest as the power to use the funds. That drops down to the second level, which is the nun. The nun, hiding in background, gets more work done than a priest in the foreground. It works in hospitals, has access to DNA.
Yeah.
It wears a habit, which is like a burqa, means all nuns can be used to carry babies to term, and that's part of their swearing-in ceremonies. Taking their
I wonder if they ever even think like, what's this really all about? I'm getting inseminated with an egg. I don't even know.
Well, it comes down to the story that's been made about Mary.
Yeah.
Mary, of course, is the mother of God.
Yeah.
So if you're sold to religion,
yeah,
you think that's the most important thing. Hey, I could be the mother of God, and that way they put it over on those young girls who aren't really up to snuff. They're usually very shy types and are not familiar with the details, because at first all they do is clean bathrooms and that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden they have to carry a baby to term, and they don't have an individual mind. They have agreed that obedience is the most important thing in their lives, and their superior says, do this, and they do it.
Wow. Yeah, but with the groups, like with the power, and I was thinking personally, I was thinking it's not really one particular group. I guess like maybe a group is powerful at one time, and then it switches over, and it's everybody. I think it's
collecting the money. If they were collecting the money in China, then the groups they had in China, Taoists and then the Japanese versions of Buddhism and Buddhism, that kind of stuff, were powerful at that time. But after they moved the collection of the money to Europe, then it went from the Orthodox group down to the Vatican, and from the Vatican to the Anglican. Behind the scene, you have all of the Protestant divisions that each have a specific task. You know, can be called Presbyterian or Lutheran. They have so many names I forget. There's always somebody pissed off at something, so they start another group. You know, that's why I always refuse to turn the Institute into a group of people who would be asked to believe the same thing. I just would rather have an assembly of leaders, people who have their own brain, are prepared to have an open mind and listen to everybody else's view of things, but then through their own book of life, go back and decide what they're going to believe. And in the end, if we're successful, 13 people will provide that critical mass, and each one will be different. You can't have them all the same. And each one has to be different to protect the mass from attack from different places.
Yeah, and I know it's like with myself, I'm different from like the people I talk to.
Sure.
Different.
You wouldn't want carbon copies of yourself. That wouldn't basically do the job. You want people who are clear-minded and open-minded and are basically leaders of themselves.
So, but that's, I guess in these times, it's hard to find people.
Absolutely difficult to find. I can vouch for that, having spent so much time trying to identify them. That numbers are relatively low. One believes that you can go through 69 years of living and you can't identify 13 people with functioning brains that live in your environment, even with the existence of the telephone and the net and all of the communications we have. It doesn't mean some people don't believe they are open-minded and are not, because when you provide them with information that shows that maybe they're gone in the wrong direction, the open-mindedness disappears. And I've seen that with Masons. I've seen that with religious people. I've seen it with union people. I've seen it with native people. They're open-minded as long as you're the one changing. But if any change is required of them, all of a sudden, no.
But what I see, the problem I see with people around me, like some people, a lot of people, will be like, well, how do you explain this? This is not, this doesn't make, it's not logical. It's just, how can that happen? And if it comes down to something like with intuition or something, it's just no, I need proof. And I guess they want proof on the way they want it to be, I guess.
Proof, because anything that proves something that they don't like, they need to know where it is so they can get rid of it. That's why they keep insisting on people putting footnotes about where things were obtained so they can get rid of it. It has nothing to do with proving to them. They're not open-minded, so there's nothing that's going to prove it to them. They just want to get rid of anything that causes other people to come to different conclusions than their own.
Oh, crazy, man.
In a country like Canada, which is supposed to be the bastion of democracy, open to all ideas, you have a customs and excise department that bans books from coming into Canada. When you look at the list, you see that many of them, if not the majority, are political books. Not something that proposes terrorism or deviant sex or what have you.
They'll let that in. They'll let all the deviant stuff come in.
Yeah. They don't allow opinions. So if anybody thinks that this country is somehow freer, it's not allowed, because every country in the world has a different function, but is run by the same people, toll gators and pirates. So they allow certain things in one place and not in another. They allow something in one place, you can be sure they disallow some other thing in that place that they don't disallow in the first place.
Yeah, I see it.
Anyways, the news, I guess, for coming days, I don't know exactly if it'll be tomorrow, is that when you dial in to what you usually dial in to get to the Kealey site, it probably will not work.
What?
But a new address will appear on my email. That's the address you should use to re-bookmark the site.
Oh, man, I just over and over again.
If things go as planned over the next month or so, it may be reactivated completely so that my emails to you will also be posted on my site, as it used to be. The original site, the one I was dealing with before they cut off my Kealey.net name.
Yeah, when all those old posts are not there anymore, you can't get them back. They're lost. So.
Well, they should be there soon.
I kind of need those older ones.
But within the next few days, you should be getting a new address on my emails, and bookmark that. And there you'll see that you can access a lot more of the archive material.
Yeah.
And we're in the process of searching, all of the old material to see if those things that are missing can be reconstructed.
What do you mean? Like, what thing?
Well, a lot of pages on the site you would go to and try to call up, but nothing would come up because it would say page not found. There's still going to be some of that for a while, but as we find the material, we can put it back in again.
When you did that site, you did it all by yourself, or you had?
No, I never did the site. I directed the making of the site.
Oh.
The technical stuff was always done by strangers.
Oh, wow.
But I would say, no, I want this here or that there, and go get this, and I'd send the person a picture or something. I said, this is what you put in here. So I did all of that. So there's a technical aspect of working on the net that I'm not familiar with, but layout and design and that stuff I'm quite familiar with, having had a background in printing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
the site was my design, but the technical work of others.
How was that experience, like learning typography?
Well, it was something you learned in school, like woodwork and auto mechanics and whatever. And come to a conclusion as to which of the different trades are more interesting to you than others, and graphics was always more interesting to me. Because I believe that pictures are worth 1,000 words,
yeah.
and you need both the words and the pictures, because it's the same thing as the brain and the spine. The pictures provide background information that you can't really speak in concrete terms to define exactly what you're talking about, but the minute you put a picture of it, then it becomes evident. And it's the same thing as intuition added on to reason.
They have something in media they call hot and cold. Well, like, I think
hot and cold type.
Yeah, like
yeah. Well, hot type was you use metal and you melt it.
No, like they would say like hot would be like it would be like more of, you don't have to really participate in really thinking as much. As far as like, say you're just looking at a picture, I think that they'd call that cool, because you're actually using your brain to try to when you're looking at it and analyzing it.
I never heard that.
It was
shit before. See, you're teaching me.
Oh yeah, it's a guy named Marshall McLuhan. He's actually a Canadian.
Yeah.
He's like an institute. He had a foundation or something under him. He uses that.
He basically said it, that the media is the message.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, that's the message, and he keeps talking about like the medium and the content. And that reminds me, like back in prehistory, they didn't. The language they used wasn't like a formulated language like this, was it? It was more. Well, it was more clicking.
Yeah.
Oh.
A-E-I-O-U.
Yeah.
That's basically the language. A.
Mm-hmm.
I. Oh. Yeah.
And why? How about why?
Yeah. Sometimes why.
Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah. But these guys, they didn't know how to. So like when they were communicating with each other. See that when it was that way, it's harder to get manipulated by other people.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I learned in like propaganda. Like they had to, like uneducated people.
Yeah.
It's harder to manipulate those. That's why like Stalin he went and educated, made a thing to educate. And Mao did that too, to educate people so they could propaganda. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been reading another book. It's like a friend of mine gave me a book of like all of a guy named Edgar Allan Poe. Have you ever read anything of his?
Yeah.
What was his whole story? This guy.
Well, he has O-E in his name, which basically means the beginning.
Oh,
and he has
A-E
in his name, Edgar Allan.
Mm-hmm.
That means the end.
Mm-hmm.
And P, which is the sign for wisdom in the middle. So what he's telling you right off the bat, he's the beginning and the end of all things. If you read his material,
mm-hmm.
you will be given the allegories that you need to arrive at some understanding of secret societies, per se.
Oh, wow. So maybe it's a good thing I got it. Oh, because I've read, do you know what the whole allegory was with the beating heart, I think it was? The telltale heart, that's what it was.
Can't say I remember. I've read all of his material or listened to tapes of somebody reading his stories.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much of it, I don't remember all the details.
Yeah. But he seemed more like a...
The most important is the part about the Red Death.
Yeah, I was just reading that. And they went to 7 rooms, that number 7. And what did you get from that story?
Well, when you think it's over, it's not over. When you think you've gone beyond the problem, mm-hmm. you haven't gone beyond the problem. Mm. That's the time they get you.
Mm. And yeah,
a lot of times they'll give you a date. Mm-hmm. When you pass the date, you think, well, we're safe, but you forgot the window.
Man, that's interesting. But yeah, man, I'm even in the Bible, I was reading like they're so subtle with things. Like in the Bible, I think it was in Matthew 10:16, I think it was. Yeah, Jesus says, "Behold, for I send you out as sheep amongst the wolves, so be wise as serpents and harmless as doves." And I'm thinking, what? And it's crazy because in the beginning, a lot of Christians, they think that the serpent, and some people they did think that to them the serpent was like an evil type of thing, but in other people, other civilizations, they thought that the serpent was wisdom.
It's a symbol for the spine.
Yeah, it's a symbol for the spine too. Yeah, I see that, but like so is the tree, right? Yeah. Oh. So like, why would they use 2 different symbols for the same?
They always use 2.
Oh.
Why would they not use 2?
Because number 2 is number 1.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
There's 2 breasts and 1 testy at the end.
And I remember you posting something about doves.
Yeah.
What was the dove?
O-N-E in it. It's the beginning.
Yeah. And it could be Ave, the way.
Yeah. Oh. And D.C., because the V can be a C. District of Columbia is a beginning.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to like go back over things I've went over again and again, because I have, because when I read these books, like the Masonic book, I feel like, especially Albert Pike, I feel like I'm passing over things that are over my head that I'm not understanding.
Right.
Like I'm like, I hate that feeling. But.
Well, you can't expect to be learning something that's, 62,000 years at least, ancient history,
mm-hmm.
And know it because you read it.
Yeah, you got to experience it, right?
Yeah, you got to put it in your file, and you got to absorb it through osmosis in your daily life.
That what you were doing? That's what you were doing when you were making the newspaper?
Everything that I did was in preparation for what I'm doing now. Was my way of writing a diary. I think writing a diary is stupid because you're only writing your own stuff.
Yeah.
And so what good does it do you?
Mm-hmm.
You never go back and read it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote it, so what the hell? But if you're printing
mm-hmm.
your stuff as you write it, then you get comments.
Mm.
And you know you're right when people run you down.
Mm.
So you need to do things always as you're writing that will cause certain people to run you down.
Yeah, you said that you were getting like you said Alan Watt was giving you advice too, a little bit of advice, like after you knew him for a couple of years.
I don't believe that for a second.
Oh, he didn't. Oh, he wasn't.
No. I think I learned from Alan Watt, but not necessarily because he was attempting to teach me anything. You learn from everybody in how they approach you.
Mm.
You learn as much from what people say
mm-hmm.
as what they don't say.
Yeah.
And you learn much more about Alan Watt from what he refuses to say
exactly.
than from what he says.
But I'm seeing how much of like an actor kind of he was. Like he must have been trained in some type of conning, how to con, because he was
between him and David Icke
mm-hmm.
and Jordan Maxwell. You've got a package there.
Yeah, but
they're each task specific, but they're all basically playing the same role, doing part of the job themselves. So, I call them high school teachers. They're not the beginning types who are telling you that there's a secret society.
Yeah.
They expect you to know that much, but they try to define the secret society influence by their methods, and Jordan Maxwell does it with symbolism, and David Icke did it with words, and Watts does it, from what I know of him, from how you use the words to attract religious people.
He would use a lot of your stuff, like he would show how the words were encoded. He would use that, but there's so many other things, like in this book, when he showed you how the words were encoded, some words, he would, it would be like really simple things. He would just underline, like, one thing he really did was underline the word, the two letters, ra, 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 ra. But when after you learn your stuff, that doesn't really have any really significance.
Hey, ra is
Lords of Arts and Crafts.
Yeah, but it can also be more important phonetically.
Oh, like ARPA?
Our
Oh.
R.
Oh. But he would never explain things. I think he wanted it to seem like he was the holder of all knowledge, and I guess he liked that attention, people coming to him.
Well, it worked for him. From what I can gather, he must have done well by people supporting him over the years. Mm-hmm. Although he didn't look it when I saw him when he came to my meeting in Sundridge, I think it was.
Yeah, I wish I could have heard those conversations you had with him. He probably, because he probably was a whole different person, kind of, when he was talking to you from when I talked to him.
Yeah, he wasn't really part of the conversation. It was more, what's new? What are you working on? that type of thing, and then I would ramble off for an hour, and I guess when he had enough for his program, that would satisfy his needs. But I remember that he would call a couple of times a week, and you could tell that he was looking for material. And I have never hidden anything that I know from anybody who asks.
Yeah.
So he was no different,
Yeah.
Except he called more often than most people.
Oh. Wow. So you probably there's probably a lot of guys who are like on the radio right now, on air right now. They're probably like, they probably called you in the past. You probably don't remember who they are.
I've got people calling me from all over the world now. People from Scotland, people from Sweden, people from Germany, people from France, people from Italy, and basically they just want to hear me repeat what I've already said.
Yeah, I think in that way, that's kind of like it's a good thing in a sense, but they're using that on their shows and they're saying, and then the people who are listening, like, oh my God, that's so profound, and it's like just tightening the bond between them and their listeners. Yeah. Oh,
that to me is irrelevant. You
yeah.
know, whatever people want to do with the information, I have no control.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to observe, analyze, and conclude.
Yeah, and then whatever you find along the way, share it.
Share it, tell everybody, keep no secrets.
Yeah.
Be prepared for the attacks, be prepared for the compliments, Yeah. To me, all of that stuff is secondary to finding out.
Mm.
And many of the people who call have information, and in discussion with them, I can figure out some of the things that would fit in to things I'd be working on in the future.
Mm. Have I helped, or anything I said?
Of course, no one can call and on a regular basis and not be helpful in some way or other.
Oh yeah, there's a guy. He's gonna call you. From what I've learned on the internet, but I don't think he's not really. It seems like to me he's not really trying to learn anything. I think he's just gonna. It might be like attacking. His name is Neo. It might be like almost try to ridicule. But I don't know if you probably dealt with that already.
I've dealt with that for 35 years. When you're on sales,
Oh, yeah.
That stuff just kind of rubs off your back and you move on. Yeah. Does that make him feel happier?
I think I see it. He just wants like a following. I see it's like he wants like a people to follow him, and some type of some type of ego he has or something. I don't know. But But I see that with me. I get ganged up on. You know, I do have a temper, Glenn. Sometimes I can have a temper, but
well, if you don't, you wouldn't be normal.
Yeah.
I mean, are we supposed to be
happy
saviors of the world who are here for the benefit of all the people who don't have the brains to do it themselves?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think we're here to gather information,
bring it back to
gain knowledge, and bring it back.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense because that's all I'm seeing, like in nature. That's all. You
don't prove it until you see that you're used over and over again. You're sent back into the world more than one time, and each time you're stronger and able to deal with idiots a lot easier.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother you.
Yeah, when you were younger, like, and you're probably, say, your teens, did you know that somehow you were different from most people?
Yeah, of course.
Oh.
And everybody told me so.
So no, because with me, I'm a little different. I knew it, and people told me I knew it, but I kind of went along with.
Yeah, I didn't want to hang around with the kids. They didn't know anything. So I hung around people that were in their 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah, I used to hang out with older people too, and that was the thing with me. This one time, I think it was 22 or 21. Something just like woke up in me. I don't know what it was. Something just like, I guess there was the maturing stage, and then after that, I was on a searching stage. I didn't know what I was searching for, and I'm still searching. And that reminds me of a quote I read. It said, always search, because you'll find things on the way. How'd it go? It said, always search. Where's it go? He goes, seek always for the looking for one thing, and you will surely find another. This is the path to wisdom.
Yeah, well, searching is what you should be doing, and if you're not searching, and it doesn't matter what you're searching, it's a learning process.
Yeah.
You're learning how to learn. You don't go to school to learn. You go to school to learn how to learn. And usually in the first 3 years, they teach you how to learn. They show you an alphabet. They teach you how to read. They show you numbers. They teach you how to count. And they basically talk about the world, per se, either through geography or history or what have you. Once you have got a hold of those three things in your mind, you're parked. And you're basically parked in school until it's time to give you a piece of paper that says, this is the kind of job we want you to have. And I found school to be the most boring place in the world.
It was.
Because it was only a repetition of the same thing you had learned in the first 3 years under a different guise.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to hate. I ask people today. I'm like, "But did you learn anything from school, other than how to read?" And they'll tell me, "No, I didn't." So what's the point of going?
The point is to park you.
Yeah.
So you're not out in the streets causing trouble.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be looking for answers where they don't want you to be looking for answers.
Yeah.
And they have to prepare you. Either they're going to share information secretly with you so that you could use it against the rest of the people, or they're going to try to make you into an alcoholic or a drug addict or whatever, so that they can sideline you if they can't convince you, they can at least sideline you.
How do you think they make people like turn alcoholics? Like,
It's all recessive genes. It's there. It's waiting for a message. And when it gets its message, the key unlocks the door, and you go down a path. Know that for me, what it was that I was used to getting information from older people. Then, when I ended up going to work and was in a sales environment, and our selling was not done mostly at the office, but mostly on the road, you didn't have anybody with experience in what you were selling on the road with you on a daily basis. So the only place you could find it is if you went back to the office at night, you would go to the tavern, and the older salesman would be at the tavern, and then you could listen to their discussions and try to direct them away from sports and that kind of stuff into, what's the process by which you have success in selling?
Wow, you were on the job. You really serious.
24 hours a day.
Wow, man.
If I wasn't looking for breasts,
yeah,
I was looking for information on how I would rise in the ladder of business.
Yeah. And the way you were raised, were you raised to be like?
I was an only boy in a family of 3 children who were reportedly born within 33 months of each other. So 3 kids all the time, but 2 girls and me, the baby in the family. Parents who didn't speak to each other. Both were alcoholics. The father basically openly alcoholic, the mother closet alcoholic. Just didn't make any sense why those 2 people ever got together to be married.
That's the same thing I think about my family. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
The only thing I can surmise is that there was a higher pressure on them than themselves.
From the system.
They didn't do it for themselves. They did it for some other reason. And since one was related to an English-Irish hierarchy and the other one to a French hierarchy, and they were living in the opposite areas where they should be living. The French one was living in an English area, and the English one was living in a French area. They somehow got chosen to be the representatives who would be, quote-unquote, entitled to carry their message forward. Message would come in the way of children. One daughter which became French, and the other daughter became English, and me, I became middle ground, bilingual. So I was never able to settle on anything as being it. It was always, my position was the referee, if you will, of different opinions, different views in life. I was always the observer who was constantly analyzing and made people nervous.
Yeah. I think I do that now with people, how like when I come around, people I see, I'll say, hey, hi, how you doing? And I'll just say something, different. And I guess it makes people uncomfortable sometimes.
because they know that you get more out of the conversation than they intend to share.
Yeah. And they don't want to share. Some people ask me, "Hey, how you doing?" And I say, "You don't care. Why are you asking me?" And they're like, "Yeah, I just." It's just the program, I guess, response. Oh.
The one thing I learned, I forget who's told me so, was never talk about your health to anyone but your doctor. Because out there, most people don't care.
Yeah, they don't.
And those who want to hear are hoping you're having a bad time.
The doctor. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, something that just popped in my head. I noticed, like, you said something about, like, with DNA, like, say somebody has your DNA somewhere, they can, like, manipulate you or affect you somehow. What's that?
If they have your recipe, and they have, and in their world, there's supposedly a gentleman's agreement that if they have your recipe and they made you, they control your destiny. And part of that recipe is the ability to communicate directly to your medulla. And by communicating directly to your medulla, they can affect how you feel from moment to moment.
Because
they can distract you, or they can make you feel happy or sad or what have you.
There's a dogma like superstition. I guess this is what's based on Haiti. Like if say, I don't know, you were cutting your hair or something. Just don't leave stuff that came from your body laying around. It's like with this whole thing with voodoo, like I've heard, like my father told me, like he would be drinking a beer. He went to a bar, drank a beer, and he left for a little while and came back to drink that same beer. And somebody told him, don't drink that. Like he's like grown up with stuff like that. Don't like because they do that. Like that's like a whole in the voodoo religion. From what I've learned, like it's people who they can take something from your body and manipulate you with it, type of thing. But I'm not saying I'm thinking that's probably what it's based off of. The whole thing of how they can.
Policemen take informants to a bar, buy him a beer, and when he's gone to the washroom, they'll switch his glass and take the glass back to the police station, take off the fingerprints, and then they could plant those fingerprints in different places to put pressure on the person to do things for them that they would not otherwise do. The same thing exists with DNA. Every time somebody goes to jail now, there's a blood test. And DNA is involved. In
the jail here, they actually do a retina scan. Yeah. That's
so one stage in the future, DNA might be presented in court and saying it was found inside a dead woman.
Whoa.
But you have no way of disproving that you weren't there.
Yeah.
But they certainly have many ways of implanting it there. Because they collect DNA off of you all your life.
How do you feel?
DNA changes over time with the things that you learn.
And that's what I was saying. Like I was about to ask it. Like, if they have your DNA, like take a piece of your DNA, how can it be the same DNA?
Well, it's not the same. What they look for is a number of markers.
Oh.
There are certain things that don't change, and there are certain things that change. So all they're looking for is a number of markers that don't change. Then they can say, okay, I found 13 markers or 12 markers or 17 markers, and that means that it cuts down the odds of it being someone else, because once you pass 3 or 4, you would have to have the chances of it not being you are 1 in 2 billion or something like that.
Oh, so what's that symbolic for? Like in like Christianity, when they drink the body and blood of Jesus, that, like why they do that? Why they do that ritual of drinking his body and his blood?
Eating the body and eating the blood is basically linked to you are what you eat. You absorb a portion of what you eat as DNA. So in the corporites that they found, fossilized turds, they're able to dissect the material and find, okay, this is the type of animal that deposited this load here, and that animal was at the time eating this type of menu in a daily life, either all vegetarian or all meat or a combination of both, but they can tell that from the corporites.
The
problem becomes dividing the two, because you don't want to mix what the person ate with what the person is, so that you don't confuse who put this shit there. Not the one that got eaten, but the one that ate put it there.
Well, that can get confusing. When I was in high school, like middle school, elementary, they used to call me a Jared the Third. Now I think about it now, maybe it wasn't too far from the truth.
Well, they used to call me in French. They call me Graine, which was basically a play on the word for penis in French. So everybody goes through that kind of stuff in one way or another.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, I guess...
bedtime.
Yeah.
Okay, Jared.
All right.
Have a good night.
All right, you too.
We'll talk to you again.
Okay, bye.